Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Coming up in the next hour, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi accorded ceremonial welcome on arrival in Moscow to hold talks with President Vladimir Putin over full spectrum of bilateral issues. Prime Minister Modi and President Putin hold a private meeting at the Kremlin. Prime Minister Modi to receive Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, Russia's highest honor, on Tuesday. French politicians begin negotiations to form a government after hung parliament. French President Emmanuel Macron asked Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to remain temporarily in office. Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer promises better deal with the European Union. Labour Party rules out rejoining the EU single market or customs union. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban continues peace mission for Ukraine conflict, heads to Washington after a surprise visit to China. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Moscow on a two-day visit to Russia. He was received by the first Deputy Prime Minister of Russia and accorded ceremonial welcome. He also met members of the Indian diaspora. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Modi will hold bilateral talks with President Putin.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived in Moscow to great fanfare. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was received by Russia's first Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov at the Vnukovo Second Airport and was accorded a ceremonial welcome upon his arrival. After landing in Moscow, Prime Minister Modi on a social media post said, "Looking forward to further deepening the special and privileged strategic partnership between our nations, especially in futuristic areas of cooperation. Stronger ties between our nations will greatly benefit our people." After reaching the hotel in Moscow, Prime Minister Modi received a traditional warm welcome from the Indian diaspora. On Tuesday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin will engage in private talks, followed by delegation-level discussions led by both leaders. India and Russia are currently preparing a series of outcome documents across various areas, which will be a result of the summit.
Tomorrow, Prime Minister has a packed schedule. He'll be attending the 22nd Annual Summit. He will have restricted and delegation-level talks, and he will meet the Indian community. He will address the Indian community members and also visit Rosatom, an exhibition space.
The Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet with the Indian community in Russia on Tuesday and lay a wreath at the tomb of the unknown soldier in the Kremlin. Additionally, a visit to the Rosatom Pavilion at the Moscow exhibition venue is on the agenda. The 22nd Annual Summit between India and Russia will provide an opportunity for both leaders to review the full spectrum of bilateral issues, including defense, trade, investment, energy cooperation, science and technology, education, culture, and people-to-people exchanges.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be accompanied by Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Atom Exhibition Center here in Moscow. Now, this exhibition center showcases the history of achievement of the Soviet Union in the nuclear industry that goes much beyond weapons and also focuses on medicines and digital industry. The two leaders will also be looking at the history of the nuclear industry from the Soviet era to the modern times and the cooperation between the two countries. The Prime Minister will also be interacting with students, both Indian and Russian, tomorrow here at this center. This is Jessica Thaneja with video journalist Shubham in Moscow for DD India.
Russia is long-standing and time-tested partner for India since both countries raised their partnership to a strategic partnership in October of 2000. The ties have acquired qualitatively new character: political, security, defense, trade, science and technology, culture, people-to-people ties are the broad areas of cooperation. Mihir Mekhuri gets us more.
Russia share a long history of cooperation that dates back decades. Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner to India. Development of India-Russia relations has been a key pillar of India's foreign policy. The annual summit between the Prime Minister of India and the President of the Russian Federation is the highest institutionalized dialogue mechanism in the strategic partnership between India and Russia. India and Russia share deep historical roots, significantly strengthened by Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his tenure as Chief Minister of Gujarat. Now let's take a look at the growing ties between India and Russia. PM Modi's first visit to Russia on the 6th of November 2001 when he was Chief Minister of Gujarat. PM Modi accompanied the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee to Moscow for India-Russia summit with President Vladimir Putin. During this visit, the then Chief Minister Modi signed a protocol pact for cooperation between Gujarat and Astrakhan. They agreed to work together in the fields of diverse sectors including trade, education, petroleum and hydrocarbon sectors, science and technology, tourism and culture. In 2006, the then Chief Minister visited Astrakhan and met the Governor Alexander Zilkin. The protocol pact for cooperation was extended for another 5 years. In 2009, he was invited to address the 4th International Energy Week and the 9th Russian Oil and Gas Week conference. Since 2014, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has placed special emphasis on strengthening India-Russia ties, boosting relations across various sectors. 60% of trade between India and Russia is now done in national currencies. Bilateral trade is set to reach an all-time high of $65.7 billion in FY 22-23. Key exports from India include pharmaceuticals, organic chemicals and iron and steel. Major commodities imported from Russia include oil, petroleum products and fertilizers. India-Russia bilateral investments surpassed the previous target of $30 billion in 2018. The revised target of $50 billion has been set for 2025. Now let's take a look at the defense ties. Biennial joint military exercises titled Indra conducted between the armed forces of India and Russia. India holds a 2+2 dialogue with Russia involving foreign and defense ministers. Indian Army has Russian tanks like T-72 and T-90. The Indian Air Force also has variants of MiG-21, Su-30 and MiG-29 aircraft in its fleet. The Russian President Vladimir Putin has always praised PM Modi's leadership. PM Modi also calls Russia a time-tested partner. This visit has taken the ties of the two countries to a new high. Mihir Maikuri's report, DD India.
Russian President Vladimir Putin hosted a private dinner for Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his country home on the outskirts of Moscow. Both the leaders got an opportunity away from the public glare to focus on more sensitive issues on the agenda. And to talk about Prime Minister Modi's visit to Russia, joining me is Dr. Rajan Kumar from School of International Studies, JNU. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, Prime Minister Modi and President Putin are going to engage at the annual India-Russia talks. It's taking place after a gap of about 3 years, the 22nd edition. How do you see the scope and importance of it, especially in the current geopolitics?
Shubhendu, thank you for having me here. And I think this is extremely important. And this was a kind of, the kind of disruption that had taken place between the annual summit meeting between the two countries. So that was kind of that created some issues, at least in Moscow, where some of the people in Moscow started talking that probably India is not prioritizing its ties with Russia. And that's the reason they were giving that annual meeting between the two countries were not taking place since 2021. The last meeting was in 2021. But this visit of Prime Minister Modi will send a very important message to Russia in assuaging their apprehensions and reaffirming India's commitment to his ties with Russia. This is also his first visit in the sense that after third term, when he became the Prime Minister, so this is a first visit to a foreign destination for bilateral meeting. Earlier, he had gone to this Italy, but that was for multilateral summit. So from that perspective, this is extremely important. There are a number of issues which are going to be discussed, but the most important is that they'll start from where they left off in 2021. And as you know, that India's ties with Russia are very comprehensive, and we have, if you name one area, and we are cooperating in that area, right from defense, now economy, and then there's cultural ties, and also space cooperation, nuclear cooperation. So every area, we have very strong cooperation, and we also have very special kind of relationship, which is known as a special and privileged partnership. India does not have that kind of partnership with any other country in the world. Also, the annual summit meeting that we are talking about, that summit, India, there are only 2-3 countries with which India has that summit kind of cooperation. One is Russia, the second one is Japan. So that kind of demonstrates the relationship that India has with Russia. In this particular visit, as far as issues are concerned from India's perspective, I think the issue of trade is very important, because we have a trade of now roughly 65 point something that you showed in your program,
yes.
$65 billion. But out of that, only India exports only $4 billion. So there is a trade deficit of roughly $61 billion. How do you pay back to Russia? So there are several options. One is that Russia can invest part of that money in India. Thus, India will insist. The second is that Russia should also buy more products from India, because what we're exporting is very less compared to what we're importing from Russia. So that issue is again important, and probably they'll also be talking about paying in national currency. For instance, at the moment, Russia wants India to pay in the hard currency, which is dollar, euro, or it also says sometimes Chinese currency, which is renminbi. India would like to pay in the local currencies or through the barter mechanisms. So that is one important issue. The Russia-Ukraine war will definitely be discussed, because that war has impacted not only Russia and the neighboring countries, but the entire global South. And because of that, the fertilizer prices have gone up. Because of that, the energy prices have gone up, and countries of the global South are suffering. So Prime Minister Modi will definitely raise this issue. My hunch is that he'll not push too much on ceasefire, because India believes at this moment that probably the milieu is not very conducive to talk about the ceasefire when NATO is having a summit in Washington, which is coinciding with tomorrow's meeting, and they're planning to fund Ukraine again. They're also trying to provide lethal weapons to Ukraine. And as you can see from today's report, the crisis between Russia and Ukraine is escalating. Russia has several attacks on Kyiv and a number of other cities. But that issue is important. Maybe they'll not push for some kind of ceasefire, but again, Prime Minister will emphasize the importance of dialogue and diplomacy.
And Dr. Kumar, because you're talking about the Ukraine conflict, there's an issue of Indian military recruits in Russia, the issue that would need resolution. Do you see that featuring in an important way in the engagements?
Oh, of course, without any doubt. From India's perspective, that issue is very important, because they are our citizens, and we have a policy not to allow our citizens to become, join military in other countries. And this issue was raised by External Affairs Minister earlier and a number of other forums. Prime Minister will definitely raise this issue, and let me assure you that that Russia will take this issue very seriously. If there are 20 people who are supporting the Russian army in some ways, that will not make any difference for Russia. So Russia will definitely take this issue very, very seriously, and ensure that Indian citizens are not duped or not recruited in the army, because we do not have that kind of policy. Unfortunately, some of the soldiers were killed also during the fight, and that was very unfortunate. But yeah, this issue will definitely be discussed during the meeting.
Right, Professor Kumar, also it is said that in international diplomacy, a lot can be read through body language. The very initial visuals of engagement of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin is a warm hug between the leaders. How do you see the manner in which the two leaders take forward on their shoulders the relationship between the nations?
Normally, such hugs are done for the optics, and they're important from the optics perspective. But this particular hug is very important in communicating a very strong message, not only to Russia, but to the entire world. This message, which is being communicated through that hug, that India remains committed to Russia. India will not sacrifice Russia under any pressure, under any circumstances. Yes, we want a very peaceful resolution of the conflict, and we are not taking any sides. But Russia figures very prominently in India's strategic calculations, and this hug actually conveys that message to the world that India will not back out so far as India's ties with Russia are concerned. Yes, we will not supply weapons to Russia. Yes, we do not recognize some of the territories which have been annexed by Russia, and so but. We stand with Russia as far as our bilateral ties are concerned, as far as economic ties are concerned, cultural ties are concerned. So, that is the message which is being communicated through the handshake and through the hug that you saw between the two. Also because, but this Prime Minister Modi has met President Putin 16 times earlier in the last 10 years, and this was 17th. Had it not been disrupted, so probably he would have met, more than 20 times. Disruption happened because of COVID and later because of the Russia-Ukraine war. So, he has a very personal camaraderie, I've seen. He respects Putin a lot. And also, let me tell you, Putin respects Prime Minister Modi a lot. And when they're elected in the new term, so, they make it a point to congratulate each other as quickly as possible. So, they share a personal camaraderie, and that reflects in the hug that you're talking about.
And talking about the warm relationship between the two nations, Dr. Kumar, does the evolution of Russia-China relationship and India-US relationship also have a bearing on the manner in which India-Russia go ahead together?
I think in my view, what explains the reason of the timing of this visit and also the urgency of this visit, as you know, this visit was not planned, and just a few days back, the Prime Minister decided not to go to Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but he is visiting Russia. So, there is a clear messaging there that we say that we do not want China to be the dominant power which start dominating Russia. Russia, we understand the limitation, and we understand the concerns of Russia today because Russia has been isolated, so it does not have too many choices, and China becomes a kind of compulsion. Having a good ties with China is Russia's compulsion. But at the same time, we also want to ensure that China should not start dictating Russia so far as Russia's ties with India are concerned. So we want to have that kind of balance. So when India is negotiating with Russia, it is not just India is balancing the West with its ties with Russia. India is also trying to balance its ties with China.
Dr. Kumar, I'll just put you on hold for a moment. There are visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi alongside Russian President Vladimir Putin, both the leaders taking a walk together and having a chat. It's a special welcome by Russian President Vladimir Putin at his country home on the outskirts of Moscow. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin taking a walk. Those visuals coming in from Moscow. Prime Minister is on a two-day visit to Russia for the India-Russia annual talks. And there are those visuals of the two leaders having a conversation over a walk. The venue is Moscow. Russian President Vladimir Putin is hosting a private dinner for Prime Minister Narendra Modi at his country home on the outskirts of Moscow. It's an opportunity for both the leaders for a direct conversation away from the media glare. And those visuals coming in from Moscow. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on a two-day visit to Russia. On the agenda are engagements in the area of energy, security, trade, investment, health, education, culture and tourism. Dr. Kumar, as we play these visuals, if you can also take us through the importance of the key areas of engagement between the two countries when the leaders hold talks on Tuesday.
Isolated from the West, and Russia is looking for, Russia is trying to send a narrative to the entire world that although it's not having this trade and negotiation with the West, but Russia has a very strong relationship with the countries of the global South, and the countries which matter in the global South, say for instance China, India, South Africa, Brazil. So they are very sympathetic to the Russian cause, and they know that the war has been started by NATO has played a role in that inception of the war with Ukraine. So, but these countries are very sympathetic. And let me tell you that why this visit is very important from Russian perspective, because earlier we have seen that Xi Jinping visited Moscow, a couple of times, maybe twice in the last 2 years or something. And then the President Putin also visited China, twice. But this is a democratic leader. Prime Minister Modi has been democratically elected from a democracy which is the biggest democracy in the world. So from that perspective, it validates the regime of Putin. And Putin was looking for this kind of opportunity. And I think, the reason why the Prime Minister chose Russia as the first destination, because probably the request came from none other than the President that, that India should visit and resume the dialogue which was disrupted after 2021. So about the issue that you were talking about from India's perspective now, in my view, the most important issue is the trade deficit with Russia that we have today. This was not the case earlier because just a few years ago we had only a trade of roughly $10 billion, but today we have a trade of $65 billion. And as I said, that India is having an export of only $4 billion. So how do you pay to Russia? That's an issue, and we would like to export much more than paying just in hard currency. So that is one issue to be discussed. We'll also expect Russia to, because Russia is getting so much of this trade money from India, so we'll expect Russia to invest some amount of that money in India. And as you showed in your figure, that we already have a bilateral investment of roughly $30 billion. But I think there is a lot of scope for investment by Russia in India. So that is second issue which is going to be discussed. One important issue related to India-Russia is this issue of this what you call defense supply of defense spare parts. As you know that we import a lot of products from defense products from Russia, and even today, Russia is one of the biggest exporters. Although we have diversified in the last few years, where United States, Israel, and France, etc., they are supplying a lot of weapons. But even today, Russia remains the most important partner, defense partner of India. So we would like a timely kind of supply of spare parts. We understand Russia's issue because of war. Russia is not supplying on time, but we'll expect that we also have our security needs. So we'll insist that Russia supplies some spare parts to India, which we need. The third issue that definitely we discussed is the issue of the defense cooperation. Nuclear cooperation. And as you know that the Prime Minister Modi tomorrow could be visiting one center, as it was shown by your reporter, that is called ATOM. So ATOM, it kind of showcases the cooperation, the evolution of Russian nuclear program. And in that, India-Russia nuclear cooperation is very important, as you know. In Kudankulam, the Tamil Nadu nuclear, we have nuclear reactors. One and a third is the two nuclear reactors which are already operational. But there are several other nuclear this reactors which need to be operational. This will take time, so we'll talk about that. Maybe some of the MOUs can be signed about that. We'll also talk about the space cooperation. As you know that India has a very strong space cooperation with Russia, so that is another issue. And beyond that, because we are also cooperating in the field of culture now. I can see my university, a lot of students are visiting Russia today, in different places, very frequently. So Russia has started inviting a lot of students from India, and now partly because Russia has been kicked out by the West. So Russia has started focusing on countries of the global South, in which China figures very prominently, and India also figures very prominently. So cultural ties are one of the issues that the two leaders will discuss. How can we enhance cooperation? And I can tell you that in our university, every month we have several visitors from Russia, because now they cannot visit the Western country. So, they want very strong cooperation with universities in India. So student exchanges between the two, educational exchanges, that issue will certainly come up in the discussion of the two countries. So in my view, India-Russia ties are very, very comprehensive. I think it's a very unique relationship. No two other countries, not even Russia and China, have that kind of relationship. Let me tell you. Yes, strategically they are very important, but also there is a kind of divergence of interest as far as Russia and China are concerned. But in the case of India and Russia, there is not much of divergence of interest. We agree on the issue of multipolarity, for instance, that we want the world to become remain not unipolar, not to become bipolar, where United States and China become important, but we want the world to be multipolar. And Russia, we agree with Russia. Our interest converges with Russia on the issue of multipolarity, and that's an important aspect. And Russia has also been very supportive of India's entry into some of the international institutions like Security Council and nuclear supply groups, etc. So there are multiple areas of convergence of interest where the discussion would take place. And as you pointed out in your program, that we have a very institutionalized partnership that what it means is that, even if there is a change of politics, there is a change of leadership, if you have those institutions, so they will be sustained. And as I said, the summit level annual meeting, India, it takes place, only with few countries. India has only 2 or 3 countries with which India has that kind of partnership. India also has a 2+2 partnership, started very recently, where the defense minister and the foreign ministers meet very regularly. And apart from that, India is cooperating in this multilateral forums. India is cooperating in BRICS with Russia. G20, although President Putin could not come in the last summit that we held in Delhi in G20 meeting, but we also cooperate in G20. Also, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as you know,
right?
Russia, China, India also have trilateral. This one is called RIC, etc. So there are multiple forums where both India and Russia are cooperating bilaterally, trilaterally, multilaterally. So it's very, very institutionalized kind of partnership that we have with Russia.
On that note, thank you very much, Dr. Rajan Kumar, for joining us in the News Hour and sharing your perspective. Let's now show you a specially compiled video of how Prime Minister Narendra Modi was welcomed in Moscow and the warmth that he received there. The enthusiasm with the large on the faces of the Indian diaspora. Take a look at this video, followed by reactions from the diaspora and Russian performers.
Great job for our country, and even for the women empowerment. So we are very happy for that.
The theme of the yoga day also was women empowerment only. So I'm very happy about that, and we practice yoga also here. Every week we have yoga sessions.
I feel extremely grateful that I got the opportunity to see our Honorable Prime Minister in person, and I feel very grateful about it.
We are so happy and beyond grateful to perform in front of Shri Narendra Modi ji.
I'm very glad, happy to dance here, to perform here.
It was super exciting performance and very glad to be here today.
And still to come on this edition of DD India News Hour. France set for political uncertainty after victory of leftist coalition. US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin meets NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg at the Pentagon.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Our top stories. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi accorded ceremonial welcome on arrival in Moscow to hold talks with President Vladimir Putin over full spectrum of bilateral issues. French politicians begin negotiations to form a government after hung parliament. French President Macron asks Prime Minister Attal to remain temporarily in office. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orbán continues peace mission for Ukraine conflict, heads to Washington after surprise visit to China. Britain's new Prime Minister Keir Starmer on Monday promised to get a better deal with the European Union on post-Brexit trading rules. He visited Northern Ireland on Monday, his first visit since becoming the Prime Minister. Speaking to journalists in Northern Ireland's Belfast as part of a tour of 4 nations of United Kingdom, Starmer highlighted that improving UK's relationship with EU would require a commitment to uphold existing agreements. Labour has ruled out rejoining the EU single market or customs union, but has said it is possible to remove some trade barriers with the 27-nation bloc, which Britain left in 2020.
We want to improve relations with the EU. We think we can get a better deal than the botched deal that Boris Johnson brought home, and we will work on that, understanding the work that needs to be done and the nature of the challenge. But yes, we do want to improve that relationship.
And DD India's Ollie Barrett gets us more from London.
A lot of this is about tone and about atmospherics and about optics. Keir Starmer making it very clear that he wants to get across the 4 nations of the United Kingdom within the very first few days of his time in office. Now, he has a NATO leaders summit to head to in Washington on Tuesday, so he knew he had to do it before then, and that's why he's rattled around the country very quickly since winning the election last week. He says that, again, he believes that relations between London and the devolved administrations in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, the other countries, nations that make up the United Kingdom, he says relations have been strained at times between central government and the devolved administrations, and he wants to improve that. So that's been part of it, going and shaking hands with leaders in the UK's nations and talking about areas of concern and trying to forge a constructive relationship. When it comes to Wales, for example, there is a Labour government in Wales, and now it's a Labour government in London. So that, you would expect, means that they would find it more easy to work together than, for example, in recent years when we've had a Labour administration in Wales and a Conservative administration in government. And so those different political parties have sometimes come up against each other in various different ways. But Keir Starmer also just wanting to cement the idea as the new Prime Minister that he's the Prime Minister of the entire United Kingdom, and wanting to make it clear to all of the 4 nations of the UK that they are all high priorities for him.
France is heading towards a hung parliament with hectic parleys happening in Paris with regard to government formation. Left-wing coalition has emerged as the top contender for forming the government after it bagged the highest number of seats, followed by Macron's centrist alliance, with far-right Le Pen's National Rally coming third. The next report navigates through the pulls and pressures of what is going to happen in France in the coming days.
It seems France is heading towards a period of political uncertainty with a fractured mandate after 2 rounds of elections. French politicians have begun negotiations to form a government. French President Emmanuel Macron has asked outgoing Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to remain temporarily in office after he offered to quit following his party's performance in the polls. However, a member of France's LFI party opposed this decision.
In these circumstances, there can be no question that the retention of Gabriel Attal in Matignon will erase the vote of French people. It is a democratic issue, and it is a duty for the president to call on the new Popular Front to government to respect the word, the vote and the result of the votes of the voters.
Meanwhile, the left-wing coalition known as the New Popular Front has emerged with the highest number of seats in the 577-seat assembly, securing 182 seats. The other major players include Macron's centrist alliance bagging 168 seats, Le Pen's National Rally winning 143 seats. In a day of hectic political developments, political figures from the hard-left France Unbowed Party, LFI, held a meeting to decide on a possible PM candidate after pulling a runoff upset against far-right rivals.
Et n'en déplaise à M. Macron,
in theory, the Prime Minister should come from the ranks of the New Popular Front. Leave us a couple of hours for us to propose a name, but I think that's an imperative, a need as we can see an anti-democratic takeover coming from the President.
Je pense que c'est un impératif.
What comes next remains highly uncertain. The choice of France's future Prime Minister formally belongs to the country's President Emmanuel Macron, who is not legally bound by the election results. Though political custom dictates that the head of government be chosen from the ranks of the strongest political force or coalition. Due to the dual executive system, the president is elected separately by direct universal suffrage and operates as head of state. The constitution gives the president the power to appoint the prime minister, often known as the premier, who oversees the execution of legislation. The president also appoints the council of ministers or cabinet, which together with the Prime Minister is referred to as the government. How does cohabitation work? Now, as the opposition won majority, Macron to appoint a Prime Minister belonging to that new majority. In this cohabitation, the government would implement policies that diverge from the President's plan. What about Macron? The President's term runs until 2027. With no majority and no possibility to implement his own plans, Macron comes out weakened from the elections. In line with France's constitution, he still holds some powers over foreign policy, European affairs and defense, and is in charge of negotiating and ratifying international treaties. Yet today, both the far-right and the leftist coalition's views in these areas differ radically from Macron's approach and would likely be a subject of tension during a potential cohabitation. Bureau Report, DD India.
Russia launched a barrage of missiles on Kiev and other Ukrainian cities in a rare daytime attack on Monday, in which a hospital was also hit. The Russian Defense Ministry said its forces had carried out strikes on defense industry targets and aviation bases in Ukraine. In a statement, the ministry said objectives of the strike have been achieved. Meanwhile, 2 corvettes of Russian Navy's Pacific Fleet left the port of Vladivostok in Russia's Far East to carry out training missions in Asia-Pacific region on Monday. The corvettes, the Vresky and Gromby, will conduct a number of exercises in the Asia-Pacific region, including searching for and destroying mock enemy submarines, and will also work out joint algorithms for air defense and anti-sabotage defense at sea. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has emerged as a pivotal figure in diplomatic efforts aimed at resolving the Ukraine crisis. His recent engagements on the international stage have underscored his proactive approach towards fostering peace in the region. During a bilateral visit to China, Orbán engaged in substantive discussions with President Xi Jinping, signaling a concerted efforts to explore diplomatic avenues. This follows closely on the heels of significant talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow and Ukrainian leader Zelensky in Kiev, where discussions centered on potential pathways to peace in Ukraine gained considerable attention. Absarul Hassan puts Orbán's visit into perspective.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has taken proactive steps in advancing a potential peace plan for Ukraine. During his visit to China on Monday, Orbán engaged in high-level discussions with President Xi Jinping. This followed his significant talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin regarding potential pathways to peace in Ukraine, where Orbán's diplomatic efforts are gaining attention. Orbán's visit to Moscow came shortly after his meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kyiv, underscoring his commitment to facilitating dialogue among key stakeholders. In a briefing, Chinese Foreign Ministry said that the President Xi had appreciated the efforts by Hungarian's Prime Minister to mediate a political solution to the ongoing Ukraine crisis.
The two sides focused on in-depth communication on the Ukraine crisis. Prime Minister Orbán briefed on his recent visit to Ukraine and Russia. President Xi appreciated Prime Minister Orbán's effort to promote a political solution to the Ukrainian crisis and elaborated on China's relevant views and ideas.
After meeting President Xi in Beijing on a peace mission 3.0, Orbán departed Beijing en route for Washington. The tour of Orbán is significant as Hungary has assumed the 6-month rotating presidency of the bloc on Monday. However, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has emphasized that achieving a just and lasting peace in Ukraine hinges solely on unity and determination within the 27-nation EU. Despite pressure from European countries, Viktor Orban has chosen not to send weapons to Kyiv and has maintained a strong economic ties with Moscow since Russian forces launched their special operation in Ukraine in 2022. This stance has positions Hungary uniquely among EU member states, raising questions about its strategic alignment amidst the broader European effort to support Ukraine. Syed Afsarul Hassan reporting for DD India.
Moving on, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has reiterated that any Gaza ceasefire deal must allow Israel to keep fighting until achieve its war objectives. Netanyahu insisted that goals defined at the start of the conflict, including dismantling Hamas's military and governing capabilities and return of all hostages, must be met. He added that the deal must also prohibit weapons smuggling to Hamas via Gaza-Egypt border, should not allow armed terrorists to return to northern Gaza. Israel on Monday claimed to have launched multiple air and artillery strikes on Hezbollah military targets in Lebanon. The strikes came after Hezbollah on Sunday launched a drone attack in Israeli-controlled Golan Heights. Israel has a key surveillance center there. Hezbollah has called the latest attack on Golan Heights as the largest air operation against Israel. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. At least 10 people have died, 40 are missing after torrential rains caused a landslide in a gold mine in Indonesia's Sulawesi Island. The landslide on Sunday morning in Gorontalo province killed miners and residents living nearby. Hurricane Beryl lashed Texas with strong winds and heavy rain on Monday as it churned inland, forcing the closure of oil ports. Hundreds of flights were cancelled, leaving thousands of homes and businesses in the state without power. Category 5 Hurricane Beryl made landfall near the coastal town of Matagorda in Texas early in the day. Iraq on Monday exhibited several ancient artifacts returned by the United States and other countries in Baghdad. The artifacts were looted and smuggled out of following the 2003 US invasion. Iraqi authorities have been trying to retrieve thousands of archaeological relics missing since the invasion. Presidential election campaign kicks off in Venezuela as political tensions escalate ahead of the upcoming elections. Supporters of incumbent President Nicolas Maduro mobilized supporters for the July 28th elections. And still to come on DD India News Hour. India's Mumbai sees high tide and over 300 millimeters of rain causing widespread waterlogging. Sanath Jayasuriya named Sri Lanka's interim head coach ahead of series against India. Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh. Returning to our top story, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will visit Austria's capital Vienna after concluding the Russia trip. The last time an Indian Prime Minister was in Austria was 40 years ago. Although India and Austria have been friends for 75 years with extensive trade, tech, sustainable development and people-to-people ties, PM will also be interacting with some 31,000 strong Indian diaspora in Austria to further strengthen relations with the key European nation. DD India's Gautam Roy reports from Vienna.
India-Austria ties go back 75 years. They both share common values such as democratic principles and pluralism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is visiting Austria on Tuesday and Wednesday, where he'll call on President Alexander von der Bellen and hold delegation-level talks with his counterpart, Federal Chancellor Karl Nehammer. In his departure statement, the PM said, "I look forward to my discussions to take our partnership to even greater heights in new and emerging areas of innovation, technology and sustainable development, among others. Together with the Austrian Chancellor, I look forward to exchanging views with business leaders from both sides to explore mutually beneficial trade and investment opportunities." Austria has a multicultural society with over 31,000 strong Indian diaspora. The PM will also be interacting with them during his visit, which is a much-awaited event for the members of the Indian community.
Everyone is looking forward to meet Prime Minister Modi ji, and it's after a long time that an Indian Prime Minister is coming to Austria, and he has done a lot for the foreign politics and helped a lot for the economic growth and everything. So everyone is looking forward.
Indian diaspora, especially the students and researcher, the subgroup I belong to, is very excited for Prime Minister Modi's visit to Austria. We are looking forward to it, and I am pretty much excited to see how the socio-economical and cultural aspects play forward from this point onwards.
India and Austria have extensive relations from infrastructure, technology to sustainable development. Trade is well balanced, around $3 billion each year. Indian exports to Austria stand at $1.52 billion. Imports from Austria stand at $1.41 billion. Indian investments in Austria amount to over $1 billion. Austrian investments in India are at over $800 billion. Austria offers opportunities for collaboration in multiple fields, ranging from infrastructure, renewable energy to startups. India and Austria Startup Bridge was launched in February 2024. 20 plus Indian startups went to Austria in June this year to participate in a startup event. India and Austria have also inked a landmark comprehensive migration and mobility agreement in May 2024. India and Austria have been friends for 75 years, and a gap of over 40 years will be filled by the visit of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi to Austria, and when these two leaders meet. There's a 31,000 strong Indian community as well who've been looking forward to interact and meet the Prime Minister, and all these events will take the relationship between India and Austria forward into the future, be it in trade, tech or sustainable development. With Camp Person Pramod Negi, Gautam Roy in Vienna, Austria for DD India.
India's Prime Minister is visiting Austria for 2 days starting Tuesday. It's after a gap of over 40 years that an Indian PM is touring Austria, which India has multifaceted relations for the past 75 years. India's ambassador to Austria, Shambhu S. Kumaran, told DD India's Gautam Roy that Prime Minister Modi's Vienna visit will add further dynamism to India-Austria relations while energizing the Indian diaspora in this key European nation. Take a look.
An Indian Prime Minister is visiting Austria after a gap of over 40 years, and it's also the 75th year of diplomatic ties between India and Austria. So what's on the agenda? Let's find out from Shambhu S. Kumaran, India's ambassador to Austria. Thank you for speaking to DD India. So what can you tell us about, first of all, 75 years being a major landmark, and what kind of a plan is there or an agenda is there for Prime Minister Modi in Austria?
As you said, this is a historic visit happening after 4 decades at the Prime Minister level and on the milestone year of 75 years of diplomatic relations between India and Austria. I think the visit is going to give great dynamism to this partnership. It's going to give the high-level political visibility that this relationship requires, and it's a relationship that has been performing reasonably well. And with this visit, we expect it to gain dynamism and content.
And can you tell us about what is the level of cooperation that India and Austria already have, and where do you see it going in the coming years as well in terms of the various aspects of it, trade, business, even security for that matter, and sustainable development?
Well, the visit obviously has a strong focus, as you say, on the economic cooperation between our countries. there are Indian companies that are operating in Austria, and there are several Austrian companies operating in India. And as part of the program, there will be an interaction with Indian and Austrian CEOs to try and see how we can move this partnership forward, especially in niche technologies, clean technologies, and also in terms of bringing some of our startups together in innovative new partnerships. The idea is that Austrian technology fundamentally can be an important partner for India in our efforts to gain Viksit Bharat. And I think that there is a good groundwork has already been laid, and what we need is a quantum leap in this partnership, and this is what I think this visit will succeed in doing.
And whenever Prime Minister Modi travels abroad himself, the Indian diaspora is an intrinsic part of those visits as well. So what can we expect in Vienna?
Well, as you would expect, there's great enthusiasm and excitement among the Indian community here. The Prime Minister is going to address them during his visit, and I think this will be one of the highlights of the visit here.
Thank you for speaking to DD India.
India's President Draupadi Murmu inaugurated Divine Retreat Centre during her official visit to the eastern Indian state of Odisha. On Monday, President Murmu launched the national campaign Lifestyle for Sustainability of Brahma Kumaris at Haridmata village near the capital Bhubaneswar. President said that small changes in our daily lives pave the way for big transformations in society. Updates on the rain and flood situation across India. Major rivers Brahmaputra, Barak are flowing above the danger levels, triggering alerts in Assam. Landslides triggered by rain have blocked several national highways and rural areas, access roads in Uttarakhand. Widespread flooding, waterlogging is also reported in Mumbai. Mihir Maikuri gets us the latest on the monsoon fury.
As the monsoon season engulfs India, various parts of the country are struggling to cope with incessant rains. On Monday, India's financial capital Mumbai and its surrounding areas witnessed heavy rains over the past 24 hours, resulting in widespread flooding, waterlogging and disruption of suburban train services.
Since yesterday, we started getting very good rainfall, and during night time, since night 2 o'clock to 6 o'clock, we have got almost 270 millimeter rain because of the offshore trough, and we have kept the orange alert for Mumbai today also, and yellow alert for tomorrow.
Visuals from across the city showed people wading through waist-deep waters with cars lined bumper to bumper on Mumbai roads. All government, private and municipal schools and colleges have been closed across the city. The National Disaster Response Force has also been deployed across to prevent emergencies. Mumbai's lifeline, its local train system, was brought to a standstill by the heavy rains. Waterlogging was reported from Worli, Buntara Bhavan in Kurla East, King's Circle area of Mumbai, Dadar and Vidya Vihar railway station. In India's northeastern state of Assam, the flood situation remains critical, affecting 2.5 million people across 29 districts. The death toll has risen to 66, with recent reports confirming 8 additional fatalities. Major rivers such as the Brahmaputra and Barak are flowing above danger levels, triggering high alerts in affected areas. In Kaziranga National Park, floods have claimed 114 wild animals, while 95 have been rescued. Relief and rescue operations are underway on a war footing in the affected areas. Intermittent heavy rains in Uttarakhand have severely disrupted normal life. Landslides triggered by the rain have blocked several national highways and rural access roads. In the Kumaon region, intense rainfall has caused flooding and damage to homes, particularly in Champawat and Udham Singh Nagar districts, where waterlogging is affecting roads and homes, significantly impacting daily life. Chief Minister Pushkar Singh Dhami has stressed the need for continuous monitoring of the situation. Bihar in eastern India is facing severe floods as continuous water release from the Kosi and Gandak barrages, prompted by heavy rainfall, has submerged hundreds of villages and destroyed thousands of hectares of crops. The Kosi barrage alone has released 400,000 cubic meters of water, raising flood risk along Saharsa's embankments. The district administration is on high alert, with SDRF teams actively involved in disaster response. Mihir Maikuri's report, DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. Time now for sports. Board of Control for Cricket in India Secretary Jay Shah on Sunday confirmed that Rohit Sharma will be leading India in the ICC Champions Trophy and the World Test Championship final, both slated to take place in 2025. Shah's comment came exactly a week after Rohit led the Men in Blue to a historic title win in the T20 World Cup against South Africa in Barbados. BCCI Secretary remains confident that India will record a title-winning streak under Rohit with Champions Trophy and the WTC final coming up.
टीम इंडिया को इस ऐतिहासिक जीत के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई। इस जीत को मैं कोच राहुल द्रविड़, कैप्टन रोहित शर्मा, विराट कोहली और रविंद्र जडेजा को डेडिकेट करना चाहता हूं। बीते एक साल में ये हमारा तीसरा फाइनल था। जून 23 में हम WTC फाइनल में हारे। नवंबर 23 में 10 जीत के बाद हमने दिल जीते लेकिन कप नहीं जीत पाए। मैंने राजकोट में बोला था कि जून 24 में हम दिल भी जीतेंगे, कप भी जीतेंगे और भारत का झंडा गाड़ेंगे, और हमारे कप्तान ने झंडा गाड़ दिया। इस जीत में आखिरी 5 ओवर का बहुत बड़ा योगदान था। इस योगदान के लिए मैं सूर्य कुमार यादव, बुमराह, हर्षदीप सिंह और हार्दिक पांड्या का बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करना चाहता हूं। इस जीत के बाद अगला पड़ाव है WTC फाइनल और चैंपियंस ट्रॉफी। मेरे को पूरा भरोसा है कि रोहित शर्मा की कप्तानी में हम इस दोनों टूर्नामेंट में चैंपियन बनेंगे।
Former Sri Lanka skipper and former chief selector Sanat Jayasuriya said on Monday that he will be the new head coach after Chris Silverwood quit following the country's early exit from the T20 World Cup. Jayasuriya said he had been asked by Sri Lanka Cricket to coach the national squad ahead of a white ball series against India this month and Sri Lanka's tour of England in August. He is to take over the team after the end of the ongoing T20 Lanka Premier League on July 21st. Jayasuriya represented Sri Lanka 586 times across 3 formats of the game, hitting 42 centuries and taking 440 wickets. He played his last international in 2011. Former England coach Silverwood left due to personal reasons. Sri Lanka won only 1 match at the T20 World Cup tournament against the Netherlands and finished third behind South Africa and Bangladesh in their group. Silverwood took over in April of 2022 and enjoyed immediate success as Sri Lanka won the T20 Asia Cup later that year. That's all in this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can also find us on social media, get the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen now to download. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour. Namaskar.